what we decided to do, there are 3,500 people who signed this letter, who are making this appeal, 3,500 victims' relatives. In order to understand this, in order to see how important it is, I think the best way we've decided and found that the best way to do it is to just call on one or two of those victims' relatives. So you can hear from them how important it is, and then magnify it, multiply it by 3,500 stories, which are all much the same, have all gone through the same heartbreak, the same fight for justice. So the first person that we're going to call on to do that, from Tyrone, someone who was a Republican who was imprisoned at the time of her brother was killed along with 3 others in Cappagh, County Tyrone, somebody who's gone through this heartbreak and actually works now for Relatives for Justice so that she could not only work for justice for her own family, but to help others seeking the same justice through Relatives for Justice, and that is Poilin Quinn. Poilin.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin and Mark and the AOH for inviting me here today. It was an honour to be asked to represent the families, and I suppose I was a bit nervous about it. My initial thing was, no, I'm not doing it, but we do need to speak out and we need to tell her story, our story. So big Céad Míle Fáilte to everybody, and thank you for taking the time today as well to be here, giving up your time, and a special Céad Míle Fáilte to any of the families that will be listening in. So just let me begin by saying that our story did not start on the 3rd of March 1991 when our John was murdered. I've no need to tell you of the history of our country, but just to put it into the time scale and a background. John Martin Quinn was born on the 13th of June 1968, 47 years after our country had been partitioned. He was born into an apartheid state where discrimination was the order of the day. He was 3 when internment began, and he saw many terrible events in his young life. Our people have endured much from internment, imprisonment, hunger strikes, supergrasses, plastic bullets, the SAS shoot to kill, collusion, British agents, harassment, beatings, a dirty war here. Our story is one out of 3,600 people who have lost their lives. Our John, as he's affectionately known and still talked about, wasn't just a statistic. He had a name, he had a life. He was a son, a brother, a friend, an uncle, a comrade. He was off this land. He had a full-time job, and as we lived on a small farm out in the country, he helped out when he could. John was 12 whenever Martin Hurston died in hunger strike, a young man from our local area. Martin was 24 years old. John knew a lot of the lads as well who were killed at Glacgall. He witnessed first-hand brutality and harassment, getting many beatings at the side of the road. And one night, the beating was so severe that it caused him to lose his hair, which made him instantly recognisable to the crime forces. I'm just going to show you a photo of John whenever he was very young. This is John when he was very young. And then this is him after he had got the beating, so he's in the middle. And then this is Malcolm, who was killed along with him. And this is their good friend, Peter, as well. So if everybody can see that, maybe it's a bit of a shine of it. So I suppose the bald head made him very recognisable. He stood out. But his love for life, he loved life, and he had an impish sense of humour. He was always up to some crack or some carry on. But that all came to an end just after 10:30 on Sunday, the 3rd of March, 1991. John, along with his friends Malcolm, 20, Dwayne, who was 17, and their friend Malky, drove up to the local pub, Boys Bar, which is our local haunt. We played pool there and we all socialised there, we all gathered there. But before John had the chance to turn the car engine off, there were hails of bullets being pumped into this car at close range. One gunman firing through the front window of the car and the second gunman firing through the rear window. John's car was riddled with bullets. When we eventually got John's clothes back, they were completely shredded with the amount of bullets that were pumped into him. The one that killed him, well, they all all of those bullets done damage, but he was also shot through the head. One of the weapons used to murder our sons and brothers was also used to murder 17 other people. This weapon, along with an arsenal of guns and ammunition, were imported into the north of Ireland by loyalists in conjunction with state agents and British intelligence groups. On the day that John, Malcolm, Dwayne and Tommy were killed, it had been noted there was a lot of security forces in the area. And if I could just give you a quick background of the area that we were born and reared in. So if you can imagine, so I'm speaking to people now in America and Canada and Australia, and I know that there's people in Ireland as well that have joined in here. So imagine this small rural village, this little village out in the country, surrounded by fields, rocky outcrops. It's mountainous, it's farmland, mountainous farmland. We're high up in the hills. I mean, no one else gets snow. We get it. We actually have snow here today. We're a proud people from Montmore, Cappagh and Galway and surrounding areas. We have a strong sense of community. And we live in a place that's steeped in a history of rebellion, the brave Renardine, Shane O'Donnelly being one. And just as a point of interest for anybody that might not know this, Altmore was also the birthplace of James Shields, who became a politician in North America, rumoured for challenging Abraham Lincoln to a duel. So it's just a wee bit of history for you. But anyway, this is a quiet rural area, hard to get in and out of without being noticed. But the day on the 3rd of March 1991, there were checkpoints set up, heavy helicopter activity all day, and then before the attack, they all disappeared. So to backtrack to a week before our people were murdered and to the end of February 1991, remembering that John, Malcolm, Dwayne and Tommy were killed on the 3rd of March. So 1 week before that, a regiment of the British Army, accompanied by an RUC man, came into Boyle's Bar. They drew a detailed plan of the inside of the premises, and they also took notes of who was in the bar at that time. 1 week later, 4 men lay dead. Dwayne, 17 years old, Malcolm, 20, John, 22, and Thomas. Thomas had been shot through the broken toilet window of the bar. Thomas was 52. He had went in there, into the toilets in the bar, to go to safety when he heard the shooting. So the terrorist who shot through the broken toilet window seemed to have prior knowledge that by shooting in there, he would clearly be able to target more people. So we have long held the knowledge and the belief that there was collusion between the RUC, British Army, intelligence services, and the loyalist paramilitary organisations. And we believe that the now PSNI are off the scene. We believe that those orders to kill our people came from the top. And when people talk about there being one bad apple, we believe the whole orchard was rotten. Those death squads could roam freely without fear of hindrance or prosecution. Our local village and outlying areas experienced some of the highest levels of security force surveillance in the north of Ireland. And can I just say that at this point, due to time restrictions, that I have briefly covered John, Malcolm, Dwayne and Tommy's murders, and I'm very mindful of their families who may be watching. And I don't want to do them or their loved ones an injustice. Also, it's painful to remember and to speak it out. But I would say that if anybody does want to know a wee bit more, I have no hesitation if anybody wants to email me or whatever, I get my details of Martin Galvin. But there's also has been a book written. There's a wee bit today, like show and tell. So this book was written in conjunction with the families, and it's counterinsurgency and collusion in the north of Ireland. So if anybody did want to know more, that book's available. We're just an ordinary people. Those who were brutally taken from us, from the hearts of our families, were ordinary people. They were joiners, plasters, builders, teachers, students, counsellors, people of political aspirations, people of no political aspirations. War and the effects of it do not disappear overnight. They leave long-lasting trauma, pain and grief in societies in which they occur. It is a commonly held misperception throughout the world that conflict in Ireland is over and done with because of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. What is not recognised widely, however, is the extent of the conflict on our people, the emotional, psychological, and in many cases, the physical effect we've been left with. Many of us have lost loved ones. Many of us have been attacked. Many of us were brutalised. The context of the conflict means that many people did not get the full closure they required. They did not discover why or how their loved ones had been targeted. And even though relative peace is welcome, it comes without the conflict being fully investigated, without a sense of truth or conciliation to what happened here. One of the biggest challenges facing us now as a society is dealing with the legacy, of which 3,600 people lost their lives and human rights abuses were systematically perpetrated. The past cannot be undone, but it is my belief that we can be dealt with in a way that acknowledges the loss, the harm, and the abuses inflicted. The north of Ireland was a battleground. The British government clearly perpetrated acts of war crimes, and they're still denying our rights under domestic and international law. Mentions of vexatious prosecutions and witch hunts are merely smokescreens, again to evade and avoid and to continue with their policy of bad faith and dishonesty. With the help of relatives of justice who are with us every step of the way and who keep the families at the heart of this process, our message is simple. We demand truth, accountability, and justice. On the 25th anniversary of John, Malcolm, Dwayne, and Tommy's murder, RFJ launched a report which can be viewed online on Relatives for Justice website, along with other reports that have been completed by other families seeking justice. Heartbreaking stories of love and loss. And this is one of the reports. This is one that belongs to us. Speaking personally, I don't have an issue with those who pulled the trigger in the murder of John. But I do with the government that was complicit in that murder. They are responsible for those actions, those who researched it, funded, and drove this policy of collusion. The British government must accept responsibility for the murder of its own citizens and not cover up the truth. All we are asking for is the truth. And I feel that we've been let down as well by the Irish government. And a quote that comes to mind is that of Martin Luther King. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. We're still fighting, and we want to thank you, Irish America, for your continued support. And with your help, we can put pressure on the British government. What would you do if it was your brother, your son, your father, your mother or daughter, sister, husband or wife who'd been so brutally taken away from you? John will be dead 30 years on the 3rd of March this year. His father, Pat Quinn, just turned 90 years young. John's mother died 2 years ago with Parkinson's, which I believe a contributing factor was the terrible stresses piled upon her over the years. And John's brother, Gerard, died 1 year ago. They didn't get to hear any truth, but to honour John and his friends, it is our duty to remain defiant in our pursuit for truth, accountability and justice. Our conscience wouldn't allow us anymore to do otherwise, and I think about John all the time. I try to remember him in my life, and I see him in my children. People have said to me, forget about the past, that, it's gone, that's it. But we can't forget about these brave men and women who stood up for us. John has nieces and nephews who will not forget. They will not be going away. And we are very heartened by the amount of young people who signed the letter in the paper during the week, and the next generation will not let this slide. They say that those bullets keep travelling, and it's very true. But also our strength and our resistance together will keep travelling. Gura Mila, my Agav, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today.